Good afternoon, everyone. So we are Group 3. We are going to present Module 3, which is the genealogical and cultural connections of the tri-people of MINSUPALA. So I have here objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students should be able to answer the following questions, which are number 1, based on oral traditions, do we have basis for saying that the tri-people of MINSUPALA or this archipelago were related genealogically? Number 2, what other evidences can we cite to show that the tri-people were indeed related or connected? So let's proceed to the legend of Tabunaway. So the legend of Tabunaway has 3 known versions, which are the Magindanaon Tiduray, Magindanaon Manubo, and the last one will be Magindanaon Subanon version. So we have here in the Magindanaon Tiduray version, the story tells us the 2 brothers Tabunaway and Mamalu who shared the same father and the same mother. They had a sister named Surabanon, who became the wife of Sarip Kabungsuan, came to teach Islam. The younger brother, Tabunaway, accepted Islam, while the older brother retained his indigenous religion. The 2 then made an agreement that Mamalu will live in the hills, while Tabunaway stays in the coast. They further agreed to continue respecting each other and continue trading. With that solemn agreement, the 2 parted, Mamalu to the hills, while Tabunaway remained in their little hut by the Rio Grande. From that day on, the brothers shared each other's produce and problems. Sometimes, Tabunaway went to the hills with fish, salt, and coconuts, and other things that Mamalu gave him. At the other times, it was Mamalu who would go to visit his younger brother by the river. True to their covenant, the 2 pass on the agreement to their children, who pass it on the next generation, and so on down the line. From the Mamalu came the Tidurays of today, and from Tabunay came to the Magindanaons. Let's proceed to the Magindanaon Manobo version. It differs a little from Magindanaon Tiduray version, or in that the former Timway or Tabunay was the older brother, who did not accept Islam and became the ancestor of Manubo, while the younger brother Mamalu accepted Islam and became the ancestor of Magindanaon. So we also have the Magindanaon Subanon version that talks more on character in the account collected by Emerson Crescent. So Tabunaway, who lived in Nawan or old name of Zamboanga with his siblings, his paired head was a fathom long and as large as a smaller tree. Its shaft was thick as man's thigh. Then Sarip Kabungsuan arrived and spread Islam. Tabunaway and some of his siblings received the new religion. Tabunaway became ancestors of Magindanaon. His brother Dumalandan became the ancestor of Maranao. Their only sister Lindang became the wife of Sarip Kabunsuan, and from their marriage descend the Tausug. 3 of Tabunaway's brothers did not welcome Sarip Kabungsuan or Habalu, who became the ancestor of Blaan, Tiduray, Manubo, Bagubo, and other hill tribes. So, what insights are we getting from these stories? So, the moral of this story is, it is a good basis for saying that our people at the very beginning were related not only by the language or by the culture, but instead, it is by blood. So, this kind of stories are living memories of people that point to our long-lost connections. While some might argue that oral traditions are not perfect historical sources because in the course of time, realistic fantastic elements are modeled, subtracted, or added. So, they nonetheless remain important windows to our past. So, according to Vansenna 1965, many epics have historical dimensions. The hero once really lived or some of the incidents, usually the main plot correspond to the actual events or minor or major importance. The historian uses them more as reports about existing situation in a recent past than as a source about these persons or incidents. They or the epics may well disappear, not into oblivion, but as their substance is cannibalized for later epics or passes into tale. If we are to believe the legends of Tabunaway and his siblings, then we must also convince of the blood relations of the Moro and Lumad, being branches of the same trunk, the Maguindanaon, Maranao, Tausug, Tiduray, Manobo, Bagubo, and Subanon, Blaan, and other hill tribes must be rekindable this old connection. It is very important then that the members of these tribes respect and uplift each other instead of making stereotypes and derogatory remarks. Because every time a member of one tribe makes derogatory comment on others, he is actually making a derogatory statement of his own relative. But will this connection apply only to the Moro and Lumad? No. So, apart from the Cebuano-Bisaya connection, we also see links that bring other peoples into the picture of Tabunaway legend. It is well known that while the people of Caraga region in northeastern Mindanao, such as Butuanon, Surigao-nun, Camayo, and others, are Christians now. Linguistically, however, their connection to the Manobo given. Thus, while the Tabunaway legend does not specifically mention to the Surigao-nun, Butuanon, the Camayo, and the other related peoples, it nonetheless mentions tribes are linked to the other tribes of the island. It is also important to note that the web of connections is not only confined to Visayas and Mindanao. If we are factor in connections, rulers in Manila, such as Sulaiman and Lakandula, to the Sultan of Brunei, who in turn was connected to Sultan of Sulu. Looking at all this, therefore, given us the picture of long-lost past where the Christianized Tagalogs were once connected to the Islamized Tausug of today. Who else are connected to the Tausug? It's the Manobo people and the natives of Butuan. Still talking of the oral traditions. So perhaps it is interesting to mention here that in several occasions, researchers, including the Mindanao historian Rudy Rudel, encountered several people from Sulu claiming that Lapu-Lapu was a Moro. Some Tausug, others say that Lapu-Lapu is Samabangingi. Again, we may not have solid evidence to prove that Lapu-Lapu, the chief of Mactan, has become a common symbol of patriotism for the Cebuano and the Moro. Certainly, this is no harm in collectivity claiming a great hero like Lapu-Lapu. What other evidences can we cite to show that the tribe people were indeed related and connected? If we are not satisfied with the oral traditions about Tabunaway, we can cite the Tarsilia, or written by genealogy, greatest Maguindanaon Sultan, Sultan Kudarat, to show that genealogical links of some tribes. Then, this is not enough. We shall also cite linguistic and other cultural proofs that our people were indeed connected in our long past.
Moving on to genealogy. But first, let's define the definition of genealogy. So according to Google, genealogy is a line of descent traced continuously from an ancestor. So here in the first clip, it says that the lineage of Sultan Kudarat, who's known to be a Maguindanaon, reveals that his genealogy reveals more that he could be qualified to be the common link of many ethnic groups in this island. In this second clip, it shows that the diagrams of Sultan Kudarat's genealogical and affinity connections. So in box -41, shows here the lineage of Sultan Kudarat, and the other one is the kinship relationship between Maguindanao, Iranon, Maranao, Buayan, and Sulu. The illustration tells us that Sultan Kudarat was married to one of the daughters of Raja Bungsu of Sulu, which made him the son-in-law of Tausug, who was known to be a Brunei ancestry. Note that Raja Sulaiman of Manila and Lakandula of Tondo were also related to Brunei ruling families. Anyway, Sultan Kudarat's father was Datu Buisan, who married a Maguindanao descendant of Tabunaway named Indang. Being the son of Indang gave Kudarat a Maguindanaoan blood. Kudarat's father, Buisan, however, was a grandson of Makaalang, who married Bilam-Bilaan lady. This gave Kudarat a Bilaan blood too. Note that Sari Makalaang was son of Sarip Kabungsuan through Agintabo in an Iranon lady. This also gave Kudarat an Iranon blood. If we look at the web of affinity connections of the family of Kudarat, we will see that his Sulu sister-in-law was married to Baratamay, the ruler of Buayan. One of his sisters of Baratamay named Siti Kabira was married to Mama Sapulaw, who was a Maranao Iranon descent. Mama Sapulaw was actually the son of Datu Burwa and Nungko, or Dungko, who was a sister of Iranon Datu Nuni Amatunding, was the powerful Iranon Datu who married Gayang, the sister of Sultan Kudarat. The plural marriages of Sarip Kabungsuan to ladies from the various tribes of Mindanao and the subsequent intercultural marriages of his descendants like Makaalang, Buisan, and Kudarat made his descendants a product of multicultural unions. What is the point of all of this? We are pointing this out because we want the Moro and the Lumad and the others to revisit and revalue the long-lost blood and affinity connections that used to link the various peoples of the islands. And since it is culturally characteristics of us to establish good relations with people who are connected to individuals related to us, either by blood or affinity, we thought this could help us and rekindle what used to connect to our ethnic groups in the past.
Okay, so let's continue our discussion with language and culture of MINSUPALA and the Filipinos as a whole. So from the north to the south of the archipelago, of the Philippine archipelago, we share the common concepts and vocabularies that shows a common lingual family, and it's very evident when we travel to another places. Places from places, we are familiar to their words, or we're familiar to the language that they are saying. It's because it's somehow connected to our own. Like for example, in most Philippine languages, the Philippine words are mean in the same thing. Again, like for example, heaven, we say that on every tribe's langit, or the sea. Second one is sea or an ocean. We say that as pragat, dagat, laut, and laud. So there are small or minor differences between the words we said for sea or the oceans, but it can be pronounced the same, no? Dagat, ragat, or laut or laud. The third one is wind. We say that, or most of the ethnicity again, or tribe says wind as hangin. The nation as the bansa or the bangsa. Houses or homes like bahay, balay, bay, walay, and bayay. And I think there is small differences between the words. And the rice, bigas, bugas, and bugas. So again, there is a small differences. Okay, so rice we say bigas, and some of us says bugas and bugas. So there are little differences between the words, or the pronunciations between the words of every ethnicity, every tribes in the MINSUPALA. Female, we say that babai, bubay, bai. Male, on the other hand, lalaki, laki, o mama. And child or an offsprings, we often say, or we say, majority of us, majority of the culture traditions, majority of the tribes says child as an anak. mother as ina or inahan, father as ama or amahan, and older sibling we often says that as kaka, manoy o manong. Okay, so basically how we say words are different when it comes to pronunciations or dictions because of our differences. But if we look closely or if we focus on the word as a whole, we can say that it's quite similar, or the structure of the words are similar to one another. Other than concept of vocabularies, according to Casino in 1975, that the most fascinating concepts and terminology that is similar to many ethnic groups in the Philippines is that the brotherhood and siblingships, where he mentioned that a majority of the Philippine terms for siblings is derived from the idea of infants being cut off from the same umbilical cord. Like for example, in Tagalog, they say they're igsuon as kapatid. In Ilocano, it's kabsat. In Pampanga, they say that as kaputol. In Ilonggo, they say that as utod. Cebuano, they say these siblings are their igsuon or igbugto. In Palawano, they say that as tipusod. In Yakan, in Sama, they say that as bugto tinai. And in Maranao, they say that as ripod sa pusod. So, even though these words are not quite similar, no, but these words represents the same meaning, or it has the same definitions, and that's infants being cut off from the same umbilical cord, or just words that means that these infants came from a similar origin, a similar mother and father. So in this concept, we can still say that we are still connected, even though words fully are not the same, or like the other one in the vocabulary where the words are same but the pronunciations are and dictions are not the same. In this one, we are still connected, or the words are still connected by its meaning, by the definition of the word. So basically, we are still in ancient times, we are still connected by how people influence other words and how they're going to say these words or these actions because of how they influence one another in their time, that are passed down to our generations. So that's why it's still the same and connected. The other archetypal symbol for siblingships is anchored on the idea of having the same blood, and this is embodied in the concept of sandugo, or the blood compact, which we know to have been resorted to by our ancestors when making solemn vows of unity and brotherhood. Indeed, sandugo was a common practice that our ancestors resorted to even in the face of their Islamization and Christianization. Datu Bulsan Bloods Compact with the Datus of Leyte illustrated this written in the slides. And going back to the language as proof of our long lost connections, the case of the Butuanon and the Tausug is worth mentioning. In the past, why? Because in the past, people from both places were outstouted by the language similarity despite some 500 miles of the water and the various intervening groups that separate them. It was found out that the vocabularies of the two languages are 77% cognate meaning and 77% similar in sound and meaning. On that basis, it is conducted that the Tausug language is most closely related to the southern Visayan language of the north and the coast of Mindanao. And while the Tausug has converged Sama over time, its distinctness has not been lost, while the Tausug and Botswana now live in contracting ecosystems and cultural influences. The former, which is the Tausug in a group of small islands, and the latter, which is the Botswanon, is in a delta part of the mainland. The former as the archipelago that first welcomed Islam, while the other prides itself in being the first Christian community in Mindanao. But underneath it all is kinship and common tongue that date back to hundreds of years. Lastly, let's go to the lesson learned and the peace message in this module. So it must be emphasized that we had enough connection in our past that need to be revisited and rekindled. These connections are discernible in our oral traditions, in our genealogies, and in our language and culture. All we need to do is to look back and be amazed of these long lost relations we have. So we should always trace, revisit, and reassemble and understand our concepts and our beliefs, traditions, and cultures in these modern times, because these are all because of the legacy of our ancestors. These cultures and our cultures, our cultures and our traditions are driven to our ancestors, and that traditions are all connected by. And if we started to appreciate things, especially those who are not familiar to us, we could say that it is all connected and it is all similar to what we have and what we are. And lastly, sharing the same thought. Whichever we look at, the customs, the language, the economic ties, or racial characteristics, there is only one conclusion, and that the people of the Philippines were basically one people. If we are to find an appropriate image of this fundamental image, we just trace, revisit, and understand the ethnic and the cultural beginnings of pre-constitutional Filipinos. That's the end of our discussion. Thank you for listening.